we've gone from one location to 7 locations in just the last 4 years. And so that's been awesome, and you're seeing that, but there's a tension in it. There's a tension in that, and within culture, it's just constantly that importance of living in that tension and that balance of opposites to say, how do we make sure culture's healthy, but the business is healthy? And it's a gas and a brake, man.
Welcome back to another episode of Stories That Move, brought to you by Dream On Studios. I'm Mason Geiger, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Matt Duell. Today, we are thrilled to have a conversation with someone who's not only an incredible leader, but also uses his business as a platform to make a meaningful difference.
Our guest today is Josh Wildman, the CEO of Wildman Business Group, where he's been leading for over 12 years. Josh is an entrepreneurial-minded leader who's passionate about building healthy cultures, driving personal development, and delivering world-class service, not just to employees and customers, but also to the broader community.
And what makes Josh's story so inspiring is his dedication to using business as a platform for doing good around the globe. His work is a testament to the idea that success in business and making an impact in the world can go hand in hand. We're excited to dive into his journey and learn how he's cultivated a culture of purpose and growth.
It's going to be a powerful conversation, so let's jump right in. Please welcome Josh Wildman to Stories That Move. Welcome back to Stories That Move, brought to you by Dream On Studios. I'm your host, Matt Duell. With me, as always, good friend and business partner, Mason Geiger. How you doing today, Mason?
So good. So excited for today's conversation with the one and only Josh Wildman.
Yes, Josh, so good to have you, CEO of Wildman Business Group. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here.
Awesome. So to just kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself and Wildman Business Group, just who you are, what you all are doing in the world, how you're serving people through Wildman.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at our core, we get dirty things clean and we deliver it back with love. That's like what we like to say. But we're in the people business and the logistics business. We've been really blessed as a family business over the last 72 years. My grandfather started the business. He didn't want to work for anybody else. He wanted to be an entrepreneur. So he bought himself a job, bought a dry cleaner in 1952, and learned the business from the team that was there. That was in Napanee, Indiana. And since then, we've grown to service a lot of the Midwest and over 11,000 customers, and it's been a lot of fun. We spun off a business I know you guys support with some marketing and content with You the Fan, which David Bizzoni was very entrepreneurial with, who's the president there and has just done an amazing job. So, but at the end of the day, too, we're stewards, and so we're a faith-based business, and we try to live out our business and our faith in the marketplace. And so at the end of the day, that's really what's most important, is sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with our team and our customers, and trying to live that by example, earning the opportunity to share, hey, here's why we're different. And within that balance of opposites is something we like to call it, there's a tension that's fun and exciting and challenging and all of the above. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So you've been in your CEO role for about 12 years now, is that correct?
That's correct, yep, 12
awesome.
years.
And how long have you been with the business in total?
So 25 years, we were just talking about that. So 25 years, we've grown 25x in 25 years.
Wow.
It's been a wild ride. That's
man.
all God gets all the glory in that. And I still look back, my dad is I know Mason knows my dad really well, a great, great man. And I think about it, he made me CEO when I was 35. And sold the business to myself and my brother-in-laws. I'm like, what was he thinking? What was he thinking? So it definitely had to do with God, because, wow, that was some bravery.
Yeah, well, God gets the glory, but you're the tool that he used to grow the business in a huge way. So, what would you say through your time you've seen just some of the biggest areas of growth?
Oh, absolutely. I would say, God's put in our path. One, my dad is just very good. When there's a big decision to be made, he makes the right one, because I think he submits it to God in prayer. he also likes risk. And so, when I started in the company, I was just actually getting ready for our all-employee meeting Friday. And I remember standing in our warehouse, our stock room. My dad had just bought another company. He'd tried 11 times to get the loan to buy the other company, and had borrowed, I think it was $2.7 million. We were only a $4 million business.
Wow.
And had no plan, really didn't have the right talent. And I remember I'd been working there about 30 days. I'd gotten 2 weeks of training for a route position, which normally gets, you don't even know what you're doing for about a year, but you get a good 6 weeks of training. And I just remember standing there at 21, 22 going, this place is a mess. Because I couldn't get an answer. I didn't even know who to go to. And I'm going, man, I don't know what business should look like, because I've, just getting through school, but I know it's not supposed to be like this. And, yet my dad had made that brave decision. And then too, he made an even bolder decision. He would talk to you about his meeting with God at 3 a.m., somewhere around that same time, where he just woke up and he was praying and just really turned over finances to God. Just said, God, it's yours, And at the same time, he made a second commitment and turned over personnel too. And so it was at that time that God put the right people in our path. That's been, I already mentioned David Bazzoni, but Steve Bryant, who ended up being my mentor, joined us as our first outside CEO, non-family CEO. And Steve was a 30-year veteran in our industry, and our single plant and $4 million in revenue was, he was used to running 20 or 30 of those. And so I got an MBA from an absolute expert in business and in our industry, a real world MBA. And so those are, God just continued to put the right people in place then. And so, and my dad's example of really being a steward and having the faith to make bold decisions. So,
It's awesome.
It's amazing. So when you talk about the 25X in 25 years, was it a gradual, or has it been like there's been some key moments that just like really triggered some big growth for you guys?
Yeah, there's some key moments. So that, I talk about that a couple different ways. The first couple of years there working with Steve, we had to professionalize the business, bring the two cultures together, put the systems in, really kind of absorb the deal that my dad had entered into. And it was in another key moment was, in 2005, I was in a meeting with Steve. My dad came in, as he often would, and he had a piece of paper, and he sat down. And, in business, it's all about people and cash flow. So if you get those two things figured out, which is not easy, things will usually go well. And we were, highly leveraged, trying to grow a business. So we're cash starved. I mean, literally half my job was managing vendors and payroll, and just literally to the day saying how much came in and how much can go out, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, my dad comes in, and he challenged us to make a commitment to WCC for their building project at that time that for us was significant. And I literally remember sitting there kind of laughing in my head going, oh, this is going to be an interesting conversation between Steve and my dad, because at that time my dad had started Second Mile Adventures, and he wasn't day to day. I mean, he's still owner, and still, came in occasionally to be, just share and get an update and see the team. And Steve just said, yeah, I think we can do that. And I'm going, there's no way we can do that. So we borrowed money from our line of credit to give it away, which is not biblical or anything I would recommend. But what that was another moment in faith where, you guys have heard the verse in Malachi 3:10 that just talks about, test me in this. Like, God says, test me in this, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse and see if I don't open up the windows of heaven and just bless you to overwhelming, just, I'm paraphrasing, but you guys know the verse. Well, that verse is one of my life verses now, because I'd just been able to watch that happen. And it was like, so the growth, like there's a chart. It was like this, and then it was like that.
Wow.
And, you know, at that same time, my brother-in-law and I, Drew Scholl, who's doing Leaders on Fire, I know you guys are working with Drew a lot too. We were just kind of starting to get inspired around, we had gone to Global Leadership Summit, and hey, how could we build a culture that's, you know, really trying to do ministry at work, and didn't know what that meant, but came up with God's plan for Wildman about the same time. That's what we called it, which sounds corny. We lost it, but interestingly, over 25 years, I tell this story because there's been growth with revenue and profit and all of those things. Profit being first in importance, not in significance. As my good friend and board member Steve Longbrake would say, you know, the combination then of really business excellence and professionalism with purpose. And you know, just that was what we would now call a 7-mile journey. Like that was the initial call and inspiration. So like my grandfather had laid the foundation. My dad had come along and further expanded that foundation. But it was really positioning the organization for that 25-year period that we've realized so far to say, okay, take this foundation and really grow it with significance and purpose. And so, you know, again, the right people in the right spot. And we would go into opportunities where, you know, we started to get momentum around organic growth, and then the recession happened. And every time we've had a major inflection point, the recession being absolutely one of those, we doubled down, and that bore a whole, you know, licensed product company, which is now You the Fan, which is, you know, one of the top hard good licensees of the NFL, Major League Baseball. So just these opportunities would come when challengers we would call that buffalo culture now, which is we're running into the storm. The herd's going to run into the storm together. We're going to get this figured out. And when we come out of the storm, we're going to get through it faster, and we're going to be that much stronger. And so that's been our opportunity in COVID. So pre-COVID, 2019, we were about $47 million in revenue. In 2020, we sold an $11 million division, and next year we'll do $100 million. So COVID being like the recession, you know, we were all like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And we added sales reps, we doubled down, we came together as a team, and, you know, exited even stronger. So that's been some of our story. It's been awesome. So
That's incredible. And we're going to continue pick back up on some of the business pieces, but we want to take a minute, rewind, go back to your beginnings, and talk about what was childhood like for Josh Wildman. Where are you from originally? What did life look like for you in the early days?
So childhood, I mean, I grew up in Warsaw, Indiana. Grew up the oldest of five kids, but we always had 6 or 7. Part of my parents, you know, philosophy in life is an open door policy, and what's mine is yours. And so we always had lots of people in and out of our house, lots of friends, exchange students, all kinds of stuff going on. And it was an active, busy, adventurous, you know, life, and full of fun. My dad was always really good with just empowering us to go figure things out and explore, but very, you know, if the doors at the church were open, we were there too. It was very clear, you know, this is what we believe and why we believe it, and saw that lived out. So tying the growing up into the family business, so you know, I wanted nothing to do with our family business. One, I did not want to live in Warsaw, Indiana.
Okay.
And I did not want to work in the laundry business. You know, I'll get into that piece of the story in a little bit with my personal life story. But it seems like, too, anytime I say I won't, God says, no, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Yes.
And, but growing up, I would go into the plant, Dad would have us work, cleaning out under the ironers, cleaning out what's called the pit, which is under the washers where, you can imagine, I mean, we get dirty things clean. We got lots of dirt and grime and, and he was teaching us excellence. So my good buddy, Steve Marsh, and I had the job of doing that like every Saturday, and he'd make us do it over and over again. And I'm like, man, I don't want to have anything to do with this when I grow up. This isn't very exciting. So that's kind of a funny segue. But, growing up, I had I think probably the all-American, experience in middle school and high school as an athlete, and was fortunate to do really well with that. Met my wife, Leslie, I actually knew Leslie when I was 13, and we started dating when we were 17, and we've been together more now than we've been apart. So we celebrated 25 years of marriage last year.
Awesome.
And so married my childhood sweetheart, who's the love of my life, and she just couldn't shake me. So, but I got a little burned out on sports, and Leslie was going to San Diego, California to play volleyball, and I had actually signed to play soccer at Taylor. And last minute, I was like, I'm going to San Diego. I want to learn to surf, and I'll do school on the side. But went to Point Loma Nazarene in San Diego, which is it's the most beautiful campus I think in the nation. It's right on the cliffs of the Point Loma area, and it's some of the best surf in San Diego. And so made a lot of good friends, loved that experience. It was great too, because you're getting out of a small town and seeing the world, and it was a great development experience. And so that was a lot of fun, and would lead to so it's funny, one of my nicknames is the surfing CEO, at least in our industry, because during I was 18, 19, 20, believe it or not, I drove a VW bus and had really long hair, and got into a sport called wakeboarding, which I'd always grown up on the lake, and was into water skiing, and had done a lot of snowboarding. This was during when X Games was at its peak, when action sports was just rocking.
Yeah.
And so wakeboarding was a big deal, and was fortunate enough to become the semi-pro national champion during my college years, and was turning pro. I'd gotten all the sponsorships and a job teaching wakeboarding in Florida. Leslie and I gotten married. I was going to relocate to Florida after the pro tour was done for the summer, and I needed good health insurance. So I'd asked my dad for that job where I was, I mentioned standing in the stockroom. He put me on a route. He knew I was leaving in 90 days. I don't know why he would do that. He must have been that desperate just to get the deliveries made. And 30 days into that, I broke my leg really bad training. And lost the contracts, lost the job opportunity. And here I am in Warsaw, Indiana, the place I said I didn't want to be.
Yes.
In the business I said I didn't want to be part of.
Wow.
And so I had a job.
Yeah.
And, was thankful, though, that I had that opportunity to provide for Leslie. And that would lead to just what I would be a calling, over a number of years on that journey. It would become really just a passion, both for our industry and for how you can live out. My personal motto is to be generous and change lives, and I use my talents to expand marketplace ministry. The biggest piece of that being Wildman Business Group, but then I'm also chairman of the board at Truth at Work with C for One, which is a local organization. And so if it has to do with marketplace ministry, I'm in. And because I totally believe that what Billy Graham said around the next great movement of God could very well come from the men and women of the workplace. And so I'm believing that and doing everything I can to expand that opportunity. So Yeah, but back to the personal life, getting, 2 boys, and it's kind of a cool God story. So, you feel like God took everything away, or why is this happening, God? This is my passion. I thought this was my dream, this was going to be my story. And so I have 2 awesome young men now. Noah's 22. He started his own investment fund. He's doing really well. He's a professional wakeboarder. And my son, Bo, is 19, and he's also a professional wakeboarder and professional wake surfer. And, we've had this cool opportunity over the last 6 years. We spent a lot of time in Florida, so our family splits time in Claremont, Orlando, Florida area, and Warsaw. And so it's cool to see my dreams get lived out through my boys. And we let them try everything too. I wasn't that father that like, you're gonna be wakeboarders.
Yeah.
We I grew up, man. Our living room was the boat, because we just wanted to be outside and have fun. But they played football. They did everything, and they landed on that sport. Obviously, older brother kind of paved the way for younger brother.
Sure.
But that's been a ton of fun, and involved there too with a organization called Wakewell, which is like Youth for Christ for wakeboarders, and work with that organization. So really cool community there too in that sport, and we and they have gotten to see the world through just competing all over, which is a lot of fun. So,
Man. So I want to back up a little bit. So whenever injury happens, you break your leg, like, what was that season like for you? I mean, you're going from, you see all this opportunity in front of what you think that your life's going to look like. You don't want to have anything to do with the family business. And then now it's like, that becomes like your new, like, that's kind of like your watershed moment. Was it an immediate like acceptance of this is what life looks like now? Or did you struggle with it for a bit before you kind of were like, hey, I'm going to embrace this?
Yeah, I struggled with it, so I didn't give up. It did, as soon as even too soon, I started training again. I'm not I think one of my strengths and weaknesses is endurance and just excellence. Like, I will not give up, and that can get a little overboard too. So I worked really hard to get back to where I was, but actually at that time, being in your 20s, you were actually a little old to be turning pro. You were competing against 17, 18-year-olds that had more runway, as it would look like on the sponsorships and those kind of things. So I spent a whole year rehabbing that injury and working my way back up the ranks. And I remember vividly, it ended up being about 2 years later, I was at the national championships, and I missed the finals. I got 4th. And I remember walking outside the hotel that, now I'm 23, I think. I'm going, it's over. And really you think in your mind it's over. But it was that acceptance at that point of like, hey, this isn't going to be what I'm going to do. And God's opening this other door. And I just seen that in my life, like I can look back now and just say God's hand upon me has been so evident, even to the point where physically he would break me to get me to slow down and I think listen to him.
Yeah.
So I would still go hard with snowboarding and triathlons and whatever. I got to the point where my wife was 8 months pregnant with Bo, and I ruptured my Achilles playing soccer, and I came home and she said, no more. Like, if you get hurt anymore. So that was a good watershed moment of you got to slow down and, you got to live within your limits. But a cool story about the wakeboarding, God's so good. He redeems all of that. Is, my boys start competing, and so we're going to all these tournaments, and it's not just the pros. It's, men's 1, men's 2, and veterans, which is the over 40 division, which is very competitive. And I still wakeboarded all those years, right? Sure. And was coaching the boys. And literally the boys are like, Dad, you need to compete. And I said, okay, next year I'll do it. And I ended up winning the nationals and world championships. And
That's awesome.
now I would get hurt again, season number 2, and have to hang up the wakeboard. It's a little hard on the body, but you know what fun, right? Like to see that come full circle and just get to do that, which was you know, super cool and fun. So.
But I don't know. So when you headed out to San Diego, I'm guessing 18 years old, you said you went out to learn to surf. And I mean, is that your first time really truly to surf and to wakeboard and to do all those things? Was that 18?
Yeah, at 18 was the first time surfing. I think I'd surfed one time before that in Oregon or something.
Okay.
So, but wakeboarding, I'd grown up on the lakes, and literally wakeboarding was still what's called a scurf. It was so evolving, right, as I was learning it.
Yeah.
That it was just taking off like the pro circuit and was in the X Games and all of those things. So I actually started wakeboarding. I was in San Diego for 2 years and started wakeboard. I'd been wakeboarding, but got really competitive when I actually moved back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and started competing. At that time, Leslie had gotten a volleyball scholarship at Grace, and for some reasons with her family, we were relocated back to Indiana. And at that point, we were serious. We were going to get married, and so that it did take off. I mean, it was like in a 12-month span. I went from nobody to national champion. But I had a lot of baseline around having grown up on the lake, and I had a lot of support from some people in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that encouraged me to go for it. And so that was a lot of fun. But I did have a baseline there. However, surfing, which is a huge part of my life and my family's life now, you know, that would be our favorite thing to do as a family, is surf together. I'm really blessed that my parents have a place in Kauai, Hawaii. So we get to surf regularly the best waves in the world. Yeah. And it's fun to go out and rip with my boys. And I mean, we're talking like the, you know, double overhead, really fun stuff. So there's nothing we like more than to go to Honolulu Bay and when it's really good in the winter and surf. So yeah, surfing's a big part of our life. And Bo specifically he's not like pro ocean surfer, but he's on any beach that you would go to, he'd be the best surfer out there. So it's fun to surf with him. Yeah.
So what was it like being a part of like a sport as it's growing, like as it's evolving? Like you're kind of in that like forefront of like wakeboarding that's coming in, and so I mean, so much of I think is like you're almost like you're making the sport what it is. And so it's like, how are you, like, what was it like? I mean, just identifying new tricks, or even like what the board is capable of, what you can do. I mean, boat technology definitely wasn't what it is today. There weren't cable parks. Like what was that like?
You know, when you're passionate about something, you just figure stuff out. And so it's interesting, you know, so we had a ski night, we had a slalom ski competition, slalom ski boat. I built what's called a skyline, which was like an elevated pole system for the boat, because I couldn't afford one. So me and my buddy like fabricated that. And I remember specifically when the first twin tip wakeboard came out, and it was like, I think I learned like 10 tricks in 2 weeks around like, this is so different. And it's funny now, I look back, I laugh at the boys because they're always like, you gotta slam the boat more, Dad. The wake's not big enough. I'm like, this thing's up to my waist, man. And I'll show them a video from when I would ski. They're like, how did you even do these things? But it was evolving so quick, like the board technology, the boat technology. And the tricks were progressing so fast that this was back, obviously internet was just really new. And so now I can jump online and learn anything in 30 seconds, but you would wait for the release. This is like the old BMX skateboard days of like, it's coming out, you know, they made, you know, these riders put together a new film, and, you know, I would analyze every second of that, like, how did they do that trick? And then go out and work. But that's part of it, that's why I broke my leg, is, you know, the technology and some of these things were just not when they say it's an extreme sport, it's an extreme sport. So,
yeah,
absolutely. But it was fun being kind of on the front edge of all of that. And now you look back and we go to tournaments and people ask me, well, are your boys better than you? I'm like, oh my gosh, their easiest trick is better than what my best trick was. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's evolved.
Yeah, no kidding. That's so cool. Okay, so you find yourself in the stock room at Wildman, 21, 22 years old, seeing this place is a mess. We got to do something about this. Was leadership always on your mind at that point? I mean, were you thinking, because now you've had a major change where here's the business I didn't want to be a part of. Now I'm here. Did you quickly start to evolve in your thinking of, I think I can have an impact in this place? Or what were some of the pieces that kind of led you to that?
I wouldn't say I saw myself as I wouldn't have said, hey, I want to be a CEO. I think my mentor, Steve, saw things in me that he could develop. He was truly a great mentor and coach. And he saw what I couldn't see in me. And I had some natural gifts around finance and a work ethic, frankly, that, if I get passionate about something, I'll work at it until we perfect it. And so, but I would even refer to it as kind of that I'm like an unlikely CEO because I'm actually introverted and by nature. And so there's certain characteristics of being the face of the company that don't come naturally. And but I embrace the opportunity now. I love to have that role, but I wouldn't say I was naturally saying, well, I want that top spot. Or in fact, Steve had met with me when I was still wakeboarding and was trying to convince me, hey, this is a better career than wakeboarding. And it's like, man, I've had this, I was just talking about it with some people yesterday. I appreciate money. I appreciate what it can do. I appreciate the lifestyle it can give you. I appreciate the good it can create. But I have this really weird disconnect. Like I'm not driven by it or value it. I'm driven by the competitive nature of making it so we can do good, but I'm not connected to it. So I was always like, no, I'd rather do what I'm passionate about than, be in the top spot or make a bunch of money. So.
Yeah. So what was out of the stockroom? What was next for you just in terms of career development?
Yeah. So my next role would actually be, so our controller quit and I found out really quickly why he quit. Which I had I was working on a minor in accounting. I had another semester to go and Dad's like, hey, I became a firefighter once I was on crutches and he hadn't hired Steve just yet. And he hired Steve at that point. Steve had been consulting for him, so they had a relationship and, but they weren't partnered up. And so first day on the job, I realized it says on the phone, hey, messages are full, I forget the old phone system, right? And I'm like, well, I better check the messages. And it took me 2 hours of writing down notes of vendors saying, you need to pay us, you're shut off. And then I'm like, I better check the bank accounts. And that was scary. And I went straight to my dad. I said, we have, not only did I feel like as a service rep, things were messy. Yeah. Okay, now we have no cash and we owe all this money. And he did, Yeah,
I'm so curious. How did Brent respond to that? How did Brent respond to that? I'm just trying to visualize this.
I think the 3:00 meeting with Gad came that I mentioned, finances and personnel came somewhere around there.
That night.
He might tell it a little differently, but I remember panicking and going I know this isn't good. I don't know what to do about it, but I know it's not good. And I had known Steve enough to say, hey, I really think we need some help. Yeah. And that's where, I think that meeting with God happened. So that was my next step. And then when Steve started, he was great again. He put me in a 2-year management training program where I would literally have the opportunity not just to learn, but to do every role. So sales and service and, all the administrative customer service, office functions, production. Did a bunch of projects installing, new systems and equipment. So I got I'd been going to school for business in accounting, and then I got, I think, just like one of the best internship programs ever, because it was real world. Like I actually had to, sign the deals, and it wasn't just go, hey, tag along. It was do the work. And then like being made CEO, Steve made me general manager. I think I was 25. I had and I think he went to some of the management team saying, go along with this. This is going to be okay. Just make Josh general manager. So, but, again, he saw in me things I probably didn't see myself. So,
Were there any key moments as you were going through that kind of management training on that journey that you were like, ooh, I really enjoyed this part? Or were there parts that you were just gave you a whole different perspective than you thought you'd have going through it?
So it's interesting. I mentioned two things that I'll mention three things that I think became the most evident is I really had a natural knack for finance and cash flow. And once I was able to understand in the business what's going on, I could connect the knowledge I learned in accounting, and it just clicked. And so it just came naturally. But I would say beyond that, I developed very quickly a passion and an emotional connection for our customers. Just, hey, it's super cool. We have 11,000 customers. Our average customer only spends $5,000. I mean, we appreciate the $5,000 a year, but only spends $5,000 a year with us. But they do, it's the backbone of America, because, we get to see how so many things get made and how so many families get provided for. And that's just a super, super cool thing. And how they rely on us to help them.
Yeah.
And, so that was natural. And then I had actually told Steve, again, I was introverted. Hey, this sales section, that's just not me. I'm not gonna, I don't know how I said it, but I really don't want to do it.
I'm sure
and
Steve
he
took
goes,
that
no,
well.
you're going to do it. And I think I was nervous making cold calls and presentations up until about 5 years ago. So it took me about 20 years to get comfortable and confident with, hey, I'm going to go knock on this door and say, hey, can I sell you some mats and uniforms? And now it's fun. But what I did see in that was being pushed. Actually, I realized, hey, even though it makes me uncomfortable, I can help with the sales, and it does help close the deal when your name is the name that's on the business. Say, hey, if we're promising we're going to do this, we're gonna follow through. And so I would develop now a big portion of my job is we're growing through acquisitions. So I'm selling at a very high level when you're working to partner with a business owner who in many cases has built this thing from scratch, and maybe for 60 years and multiple generations, convincing them that, hey, yes, I'm going to let you take my legacy and move it forward. So that's been interesting. Good question. Yeah.
That's cool. So we had the privilege last year of helping to produce some of the production stuff for your employee day. And so I got to see, you on stage and Drew on stage just pouring out to your company. And the culture pieces were so evident in the ways that you care for your people. Some of the compensation pieces, you were giving away extra vacation days. You are leaning in on coaching opportunities. You talked earlier about people and finances, you figure out those two things, you've got it. When did company culture become a big thing for you all? And what were some of those early, we want to do this for our people?
Well, it started in that what I would call a 7-mile journey. It started in that 2005 area where we got inspired, and then if you move through the miles, next mile was actually as we tried to share that with people, realizing our culture wasn't ready for that, and so some rejection of what are you talking about? Why don't you just pay us more? So some very real, like, hey, we've got work to do. And what we didn't realize at that same time, the third mile would be just the desert experience. You tie that back biblically. Why did the Israelites spend 40 years in the desert? They weren't ready as a people to enter the promised land. They weren't ready for that blessing.
Yeah.
And so you got to grow up. And the business is maturing. You're maturing as a leader and as a person. So you think about those miles that God takes you through. You can't always see it as you're going through it. And then that fourth mile would be the helpers. So people start to, hey, this is cool. They saw what you saw, but they began to see it early on. And so you start to get some momentum around that. Critical mass in culture is when, you think about it, what's the root word of culture? It's cult. And that can be unhealthy, certainly.
Sure.
But really, really healthy cultures have, you can just sense it when you walk in. Like if I asked you to describe our vision, mission, and values, I think you'd pretty accurately describe what we actually have written down. Having spent a day with us, that was always the goal. And so as we work through those different miles, where we're at right now would really be that momentum phase where, hey, we're taking new territory. We're going through mergers and acquisitions, new states. We've gone from one location to 7 locations in just the last 4 years. And so that's been awesome. And you're seeing that, but there's a tension in it. There's a tension in that. And within culture, it's just constantly that importance of living in that tension and that balance of opposites to say, how do we make sure culture's healthy, but the business is healthy? And it's a gas and a brake, man.
Yeah.
We're actually slowing down growth this year because we made such a big acquisition last year that if we keep going, we'll break ourselves, we'll break our people.
Wow.
And then that will affect, lives in a negative way. So, and we did frame that up. So, as you evolve, it crystallizes, and our purpose at Wildman, which is the most important piece, is to change lives, and we do that by empowering people. And so we've got some, programs don't build culture, but we do some very unique things around what you were describing. And we have life coaches, dream managers. We'll now have 4 of those on staff this year. And that's a really interesting one. We do programs called Love Works, where our team donates money, we match it. And, that's team members can apply for up to $3,000 twice a year for needs that they might have. So all kinds of unique things that layer upon themselves to really accomplish that purpose of changing lives. And then when I mentioned that quote by Billy Graham, what we want to do then is grow. Not for growth's sake. Not for, hey, look at us, but for influence. To a point that we can scale in our industry and in other workplace cultures that they go, man, these guys are doing something pretty cool. And what do we want to be, our speaker actually at this year's meeting is Movement Mortgage. We look up to them. They're very faith-based, amazing organization. That they've been super generous, just saying, like, here's what we figured out, you can have it. And we want to help carry that along. So that's a little bit more about it.
What's what levers or systems do you have in place to sense that we got to put the brakes on? We're going to break, or we're going to hurt some people through this if we don't. Like, how are you gauging that?
So there's 7 KPIs. 7 KPIs that I pay attention to. I look at a lot, but 7 that matter. Number 1 is testimony and story. So do you have testimony and story coming out of your organization? And if I can't find 2 or 3 a week that I go, yep, that's it. Tell your story, because that's what we're doing. I think actually you guys attended last year, right? You heard and saw some testimonies, right? So testimony being KPI number 1, are they happening? And testimony meaning it's not just a story, it's actually saying, I testify that this has changed my life. And we know the ultimate life change is a life that knows Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior and is connected and growing. And then beyond that, so you've got the other levers. So revenue. Are you growing? I believe if you're not growing at least 5% a year, you're going to stagnate, and then you could potentially go backwards. And the flywheel and momentum, it matters. Profitability. We talked about profit and purpose. We want to be extremely profitable. We have no problem making money. In fact, we should be the best in our industry because it's how we fuel our purpose. And then I look at are the customers staying with us? What's our retention? Customer engagement. How do they feel about us? So we measure that. And then the other two levers is you don't have happy customers without happy team members. So are team members staying? Are they engaged? So we do surveying around all of that. We track all of those KPIs. And if you got happy customers, you got a happy team, you got good stories coming out of it, and revenue and profit are growing. Yeah. That's good. Yep.
For someone who maybe has a growing business, they're trying to scale. I'm going to use us, for example, trying to build it. What would be some encouragement of like, hey, here's some, as you're building small team, we've got 13 right now. It's like, how do we start to implement something like that to take the culture that you build at Wildman and bring a little bit of that to Dream On?
So I would recommend two things specifically. If you guys want community, and that can be, all community takes is two people. Yeah. And so we got to this part of the, I haven't mentioned the book that I'm working on is actually saying, okay, there was a lot of rework and challenge in what we've learned and developed. And if we can say like, here it is, awesome. Yeah. So what I would do are really two things. So we have a program called Wild Mentoring. It's actually discipleship, but it's written in an extremely approachable way that you and your team, I just came from a Wild Mentoring session with our executive team and owners. So we meet every week during work hours for an hour. This week we were talking about forgiveness. It was beautiful, man. Yeah. We were able to pray for two team members who said, look, I didn't realize it, but I'm having trouble forgiving somebody for something. And it creates intimacy and community and vulnerability and connection. And we got this from Movement. So it's yours. I'll give it to you guys. Just actually go on movementmentoring.live. It's all there for free. And then we could, of course, share how we've started that. I would do that. And then I would go do something purposeful together as a team. So come on one of our vision trips. We donated over 8,000 hours as teams last year at Wildman, serving our community. Man, when you go be generous together, it builds a connection and an engagement that, and then that team, when you say, hey, it's tight, we need ideas on how we cut costs, or we need some customers. Let's go grow revenue. That team's going to be like, yep, I'm in, I can do that. And I think the hardest thing is when it's frankly, that's exciting to me, 13 team members, because you can put your arms right around those people. Some of the challenge I've had is I don't know everybody anymore. Like I realize that's okay at 300 team members. And I got I got this from another CEO that he goes, this was really hard. They have 5,000 team members now. He goes, I realized at a certain point, at 300, I can know 300 people. And I'm going to have to be okay with, I want to get to know you today. And I may not even be able to remember your name next time I see you. Because I might not be back to your location for 6 months. So those are some of the challenges you realize, when you break 300 people, 50 million and 300 people for our team. That was hard for me and our team. One location to 6 was hard because you can't put your arms around it. And you've got to lead leaders who embody, and you mentioned lean into what you're all about. So that's some of what we're working on as a team right now, is for our leadership team to get, hey, there's no compromise. You have to be all in, or you're not going to make it as a leader at Wildman. And then you got to lean in and get your team to do the same thing, because I can't be there constantly reinforcing the vision. You've got to be me. Do it in your own way, but you got to own it in your heart.
Yeah.
And you got to own it in your soul, and then the team will get it. So that's what, but I would do those things, man. I mean, programs don't build culture, but they're a catalyst to it, man.
Yeah.
And you start having that community hour a week, and then go on a trip to the DR and get rocked.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Mason, we went to the DR. You know what I'm talking about.
2014. Yep. That was an experience. Yes. Life changer for sure.
yeah.
Man, so Josh, what's the future look like for Wildman? What do these next couple of years look like for you guys?
So I would say whatever, again, it's all about not growth for growth's sake, but growth for influence sake, and with purpose as the foundation. So, I mean, the vision I'm casting is actually, if God can do 25x in 25 years, can he do 10x in 10 years? So again, I hold it loosely. Like, do we need to be $1 billion company? No. But maybe we could be. And why think about like going from 100 million to 200 million, or from 450 employees to 1,000? Like, God says, cast a plan and a vision that's so big that when it happens, it's very obvious he did it and you didn't. And, fortunate to look up to some organizations like Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A, who it's like, man, getting to know them and getting behind the curtains of what's really going on, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
That's amazing. Well, we appreciate you a ton. And, as we started Dream On Studios, there were a few local businesses for us that were on the board that we aspired to be like and to emulate in a lot of ways. And Wildman Business Group is certainly one of those. And the ways that you all are generous with the community, with your people, the impact you had. It's just something that we aspire to be able to be a part of here at Dream On Studios. So thank you so much for the example that you and your business have made for us and for a lot of people in the community. The impact is amazing.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, and to God be the glory in that. And thank you guys for telling stories, because like I said, that number one KPI is testimony, which is story. And, the more those stories can get told, the more we're all encouraged. So thank you for letting me come and talk.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Well, cool. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time on Stories That Move. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Stories That Move, brought to you by Dream On Studios.
Make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode. And remember, if you or your organization have a story you're eager to share with the world, Dream On Studios is here to bring that story to life.
Don't hesitate to reach out. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or visit our website at dreamonstudios.io. We understand how overwhelming it can be trying to bring your vision and story to life, but that's why we exist. And we've walked alongside hundreds of clients doing that very thing.
Yeah. We believe every story has the potential to inspire, to move, and to make a difference. Let's make yours heard.
Until next time, keep moving forward and keep telling those stories that matter.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time on Stories That Move.